Judge Joe Brown's all-new barbecue sauce and seasoning. Justice in the form of flavor.
Law firms will take this as a retainer.
What? It must be a law firm where they hungry as hell. Now you gonna help me with this parole I'm dealing with?
Judge Joe Brown's all-new barbecue sauce and seasoning. Justice in the form of flavor. With one taste of our premium blends of all-natural ingredients, herbs, and spices, you'll fall in love with meat all over again. Judge Joe Brown's all-natural barbecue sauce collection is made up of 2 zesty flavors, original and spicy. There's only one way to bring order back to barbecuing. Just add Judge Joe Brown's all-natural barbecue sauce and seasoning, and you be the judge.
Please reintroduce yourself to the audience.
Okay, my name is Trevian Cutie. I am a publicist, a political strategist, a cannabis lobbyist. I was the advocate for men during the Me Too movement. A lot of people know me from representing people like R. Kelly and Chris Brown and working with the attorneys for Bill Cosby's first case because I don't work on appeals. I threw my hat in the ring as a campaign manager for a congressional candidate in 2020. I left there and I went to work for the David Perdue campaign. And fast forward, most people know me as being a co-defendant with President-elect Donald Trump in the Fulton County RICO. So I'm looking forward. It's got to be any day now. They're going to dismiss the case altogether. We're looking at, showing collusion with Fani Willis, basically prosecutorial misconduct. There's just so much that Fani is up against, and we're counting down the days. Is Joe Biden going to give her a preemptive pardon? We're not for sure. But for me, I also have evidence to turn over to show collusion with Fani Willis. So it's been a long, drawn-out case. The entire time I was investigating them, investigate me. I watched every step. I knew how they drew every charge. I knew who they were going after. I knew every move that they made. And I have that documented. So that information has been turned over as well.
Let me just ask you this real quick before I test Judge Audio. Why were you indicted in that Georgia election RICO case?
So in the indictment, I was charged with intimidating a witness. I got a call that there was a woman in Georgia that needed help. That person was, getting flack from both sides of the table. I went to see this woman, had an amazing conversation with her. She told me everything that went down. This will be a wonderful day because she can't be too comfortable right now knowing I'm sitting in the wind. So,
right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, Judge, can you let's see if we can hear you.
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yay! Hallelujah!
That thing was sending me through Google, which didn't work. By the way, you were in the park were you there when Fani sent word down for us to be quiet?
Yes, and you spoke on that for about 30 minutes. You said, we're not leaving. Who do you think you're talking to? Actually, I bought the BBC with me because I was speaking at that rally as well. And I have to send you the link because you're in the documentary as well.
Wow, we will be. By the way, Kamala, it's interesting. Biden has been doing some weird stuff. He signed an executive order that slid in under some obscure offshore use of petroleum facilities legislation from about 30 years ago. And the only way you can undo it is to get an act of Congress. So he just put 650 million acres of oceanic territory off limits to use for oil development or petroleum development with one stroke of the pen, which basically screws a good part of Trump's campaign. But here's the interesting thing about Kamala. Wade, I think, spilled his guts so he won't get charged with something that has too much liability for sentence with a low sentencing cap, in other words, since you can't plea bargain in the federal system for a sentence. And what's going to happen is he met up in the White House with Kamala Harris, apparently Smith, apparently Bragg, apparently Letitia, and also Fani. And that makes it a conspiracy, which is interesting. Under American conspiracy law, you can criminally conspire to do an otherwise legal act if your intent is criminal. So all of them might get really jacked up, and I will be interested to see if Biden remains, shall we say, coherent long enough to issue a blanket pardon for them.
Right.
Which he might not do because he might not cover the conspiracy aspects, or he might word it wrong or different. I think there's going to be a special prosecutor, and you're going to get vindicated, and all these other folk are going to be looking at some jail time.
I can't wait. Prepare to be sick of me, because I am not letting Fani. You came for my child when she was in college. She couldn't go to school because you all were stalking her. It's on and popping. Your daddy got on the stand, told everybody that the lawyers prepped him to give you, vindicate your cash alibi. No. Till the day you die, I'm coming for you.
Well, you're married, aren't you?
I am married, yes.
Yeah. I know he's going to be glad to get that burden off of you, because that makes home life difficult. And I hope they throw the book at her, because it's disgusting and just scurrilous what that woman has done, along with some other folk, and what they've tried to do to create, what do they call it, lawfare now, which is an abusive process, which is another grounds to go after somebody on. So, by the way, Biden probably isn't smart enough to include that. He'll only deal with the primary offenses, which are going to get interesting if these folk have on their record that they got pardoned for such and such.
Right.
That becomes
terrible.
By the way, for disbarment of all of these attorneys, the ones I named, and perhaps Judge Mearsham, who really screwed the pooch when he didn't recuse himself with the obvious family bias on a particular outcome. So a whole lot of people may wind up losing law licenses or getting disciplined for what they wound up doing. So here we go, loop-de-loop, yada, yada, la, la, la.
And look at Jenna Ellis and look at Sidney Powell. I mean, this is like, they have got to be just biting their behinds over and over and over again. All you need, unless they were guilty. Like, I don't know what they did specifically, unless they were guilty, because I know there's no way in hell that I was going to plead guilty to something that Fani Willis and her, kindergarten team, conjured up. Never going to happen. But
well, you weren't supposed to necessarily. It helped out if you didn't plead guilty, because that would have been made it over, gotten it over with. The intent, from what my experience suggests, is that they wanted to tie everybody up as long as is possible. Now, Mearsham has put himself on very thin ice by insisting upon going forward with the sentencing hearing on the 10th.
yes.
And that makes it very likely that he'll get caught up in an intense special prosecutorial investigation to see if he had anything to do with maintaining his status in the case instead of recusing himself, what with the very deep vested interest his daughter and wife had in the outcome. So what he's done becomes an abusive process, which might just ordinarily result in something along the lines of perhaps an admonition from the ethical mechanisms of New York for judges. But when it comes to perhaps collusion with the prosecutorial staff in New York, Reed Bragg, then that becomes conspiratorial, which makes it a felony, which removes it from the whole equation, which, by the way, for these people who are members of some kind of bar, Trump's pardon has absolutely nothing to do with the ethical considerations. So even if they don't wind up with jeopardy of doing penitentiary or jail time or getting a criminal sentence, it still is an ethical transgression that could result in discipline or loss of law license.
You know,
Okay.
Dina, if you go to my X account and if you scroll down, I posted a clip of Fani Willis's chief investigator on the phone. Keep rolling, keep rolling, keep rolling, rolling, rolling. Keep going, 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 and it should be right after. No, keep going. That one. Now listen to this call. This man called me at 10 o'clock at night. This was 18 months before the indictment. Listen to what he did.
And I believe it would be due to an incident that occurred, I believe, in Cobb County, Georgia. We're just reaching out to you just to, I should say first, I don't know if you're represented by counsel or not. We've been calling a lot of different folks. The reason why I say that, and typically, when I speak to people, that's one of the first questions that I usually ask. Because if you are represented by counsel, I wouldn't want to, continue with our conversation without, doing it the proper way.
I am definitely represented by counsel.
Okay, perfect. So can you, is it possible for you to give me your attorney's contact information and we can route everything, as far as communications through, whoever that is?
Why don't you send me your information and I will forward it to my counsel? Or you can actually give that to me right now.
Yeah, sure. Are you ready to copy?
I'm ready right now.
Okay, all right. I'll give you my email. My email is Mike, M-I-K-E, .Hill, H-I-L-L.
You're the one who wrote that secondary report, correct?
I'm sorry, say again?
You're the one who wrote the secondary report, correct?
I'm not, you said a secondary report? I'm not sure. What report would you, no, I'm sorry. I don't know what you're talking about. So I'm probably not that person because I don't know. I'm not sure what report you'd be referring to.
You're actually listed on the report, but okay.
A report from where exactly?
Okay, I'll take your information now.
Okay, yeah. Just again, I have no idea what you're talking about, but yeah, my email is Mike. Just in case there's any confusion, I work for the Fulton County District Attorney's Office.
Okay.
Yeah, the DA's office. So I haven't written like a road report in years now.
Okay, because there's a Mike Hill on
but anyway,
the report.
So I work for the DA's office. I'm a senior investigator there.
Mm-hmm.
The number that I'm calling you on is my desk line. And is there an email that you want to provide an email or anything I can follow up with you with? And I
ask me for any other information.
I can include, all the other folks, that's a part of my team, just in case you need their information as well.
I'm sure I can pass this on to my counsel and he can reach out. And you said this is your desk number, correct?
Yeah, this is my desk line. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. I will give him a call first thing tomorrow and pass this information along.
Awesome.
Alrighty.
Thank you so much.
Have a great evening. Bye.
You know what? Fani Willis is indirectly implicated because this is an investigator in her office, which the canons of ethics would charge to her as being responsible for in compliance with ethics. You have a counsel, and all they had to do was check to see what kind of correspondence had been entertained or entered through your attorney and contact him directly. There was no need to contact you. It was known.
This was 18 months before the indictment. It was 18 months before the indictment. There were no attorneys.
Well, okay. You indicated you were represented by counsel at that point.
I had a defamation case. So I'm not going to tell him that I'm not represented by counsel. If you listen
I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying you indicated that you had counsel or that you intended to be represented by counsel, which means right there it was supposed to be cut off, but it wasn't. So that he is the investigator under her office and auspices means she's responsible for his conduct. That right there was just totally unethical, and that's chargeable against her, or it ought to be. So that is another strike against Fani Willis or Fani Willis.
It's definitely Fanny. She got
not only that,
she got bougie at Howard.
Well, let me tell you this. I knew her father. I went to school with him for 8 years at UCLA. And at the time, there was a certain Miss Fanny who was active in the Black Student Union and some other things. And I have a sneaking suspicion, since I was around when she was born and he was in law school with me in 1972, when she was born and he passed out cigars, that Fanny was taken from the Fanny who was active in the Black Student Union and Black Student Alliance at the time. So, yeah.
I wanted to bring this up because we did a show 2 weeks ago exposing who Fani Willis' mother was, but I did not know you brought that information to light, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I broke that story, I think, 4 or 5 months ago. Ended up, finding the FBI wanted poster and then digging a little deeper, finding that everything on the internet was scrubbed concerning her mother. But then there was one single reference to her father and this woman that he was sitting in a picture with, and she was pregnant with then at the time baby Fani Willis. Now, people may not have, looked into Fani the way, because I always watch my enemies. I'm going to study my enemies. I know why Fani is a lawyer. It's not because her father is an attorney. It's because she wanted to vindicate what happened to her mother very early on in her life. So she swore to herself. She said publicly, this was the only thing I ever wanted to do, and she never told why. Now, right before Fani was taking on her position as district attorney in Fulton County, all of a sudden her mother was pronounced dead. I don't believe that for a hot second. If anybody has any information of where she is hiding, please let me know, because when you mess with my family, now I'm going to mess with yours, and I'm going to let the world know. We're not tit for tat here. I don't lose, you do, and I'm going to let the world know.
Okay, let me give you some information. She was born in 1972. Her father was at UCLA Law School, and what was going on is developed. It looks like by 1980 he had broken up with her, or 1981 he had broken up with her. They weren't together. I have my reasons for reaching that conclusion. I won't state them, but it was.
Come on, Judge.
No, I mean, it involves some personal acquaintances and some inquiries that were made through me, which I'm not going to reveal because it is what it is. It just was trying to secure a hookup with a certain young lady. So I won't get into that to avoid embarrassment of the young one. Well, she's not young now. And her sister that I knew at the time. But anyway, this was early 1980. 81, so he was broken up with her mother, that's John Floyd, who, by the way, was a pretty good guy. He always could be counted on to be there when it was necessary to make a move on the administration or do something that was conscientious about getting things together. So I don't fault him on that. And he tried probably more than 1,000 cases as a trial lawyer, and he at one time was Nelson Mandela's attorney in some of the things he was trying to do down in South Africa. So he was a good brother, but let's just say the relationship, as I understood it, that he had with Fanny's mama was not the greatest in the world from day one. So I'm not surprised that there are these allegations that she disappeared. That might be consistent with some other things that might be laid at her feet. So it looks like Fanny kind of got abandoned and left here in daddy's care more so than mama, because mama seems to have disappeared off the face of the earth. So
After killing police officers.
Right. And the mother was a criminal.
That's bank robbery allegation. That was quite popular. I had somebody I was personally acquainted with. He was a professor at a place called California State College at Los Angeles, now known as California State University at Los Angeles. We called it Cal State. And he robbed several banks, hijacked an airplane, this tenured professor, and flew to Cuba. There was another somebody I was personally acquainted with, again, a professor at Cal State LA. He was a hitman for the mob, though he was black. I knew him, he disappeared. So she was associated with the same particular institution, and there was a rash of people out there who got involved with bank robberies as a style, even though they were in academia, and they fled the country. Now, I don't have any information, that's just background that may or may have some bearing on her circumstances, so I don't accuse her of that. I just give you that background so you can investigate it.
I want to ask a question. The case. So if the case is dropped, which it will be, does your record get expunged or?
I've never been charged. I mean, I've never been convicted of anything. I don't have a record.
Well, here's what you want. And I'm not sure what the mechanism in Georgia is, but in Tennessee, your expungement would not be automatic. You have to have your attorney approach the court, which in this case would be Judge McGaffey. And I don't think he'd be adverse to entering an order of expungement. And the reason you enter an order of expungement has to do with the federal system. Let's say you're going to purchase a firearm. There is a question in there relative to not your conviction, which innately is what I think inappropriate, but have you been arrested for? And you might want that expungement struck out. And I think Georgia, like Tennessee, has a provision that says something along the lines of, if you are ever asked directly under oath, you may deny without penalties of perjury that you've ever been arrested, let alone convicted for this offense. So in other words, you might want that just totally stripped off of your record. And if you get that, be sure you get it sent to the following places: NCIC, National Crime Information Center, so it doesn't spread through the law enforcement ranks. You want it expunged on the court records of the local court where this mess started. You want it expunged from the court records, and you want it expunged from the police and sheriff's department dockets and wherever you got booked in. So these are separate entities, and a lot of times people don't get the order around to all of these, and you have these
well, Judge, can I just pay you to do it?
I have been retired from practicing law too long, and I'm not licensed in Georgia. Now, the problem comes in because there are private entities that go around to earn pretty decent fees by recording all information on freshly arrested and or charged or indicted people. So they have these records after the expungement process may occur that they can sell for a sum to others. So have your lawyer look into all particular repositories of records. That's just the word up. By the way, your remarks were interesting. And you did have BBC, so this is now spread across the waters of the Atlantic.
Well, I have another question, right, regarding the case, the situation. Will you be seeking restitution?
No question about it. And I think Fani very well knows that and I don't think, Joe Biden is going to give her a pardon. I really don't, because she failed so drastically. You look at Letitia James, you look at Alvin Bragg, at least they understood the assignment. They didn't go off, gallivanting, lollygagging on the taxpayer dollars. Fani actually was just the low of the low in this case. If there was ever a moment to show the world that you were up for the job, this was her moment. And how she became just a laughingstock. It was a media circus. I was in that courtroom. It was embarrassing. She was so ghetto. We didn't care that she drank Grey Goose. It was a terrible, terrible moment for Black women in authority. I was embarrassed, and I don't even like the woman. It was have some sense of pride about yourself. You are up on the stand acting like you were big boss, and you were really shaking because I could hear you quiver. Don't play big and bad. You wanted to say, I'm not on trial no matter how hard you want to put me on trial. Those people are on trial for trying to steal, interrupt an election. No, you are very much on trial, and you did it to yourself.
Let me say this about her. She did not have the kind of upbringing she's trying to portray. She got up there and acted like a hood rat, but Daddy was a good lawyer. She was with him for a lot of the time, and Mama certainly wasn't exactly a hood rat either, because she was educated, so she's putting on with that. The interesting thing about it is that when you're talking about a conspiracy, there are some interesting changes in the laws relative to evidence. As I said earlier, you can criminally, feloniously conspire to do what is otherwise a legal act. And the interesting thing is a conspiracy is viewed as such a dangerous thing to society that there's some relaxations of the rules of evidence, which means all you have to do is show approximate relationship between any one person, which includes anybody that might be caught up in this process, and the conspiracy. And if any one person does any act that advances the conspiracy, then everybody is chargeable with it, even if they did not do anything to commit that one overt act, they call it. So when you get that, they relax the rules of evidence. And a lot of what is said by one person uniquely becomes introducible, subject to introduction against all people. See, in other words, if they were trying to prove the case against you with what she brought against you, then what winds up happening is they have to prove what you did individually. But if it's a conspiracy, all they have to do is prove the existence of the agreement, and then you get stuck with any act anybody involved in this agreement does. You see, now, the other thing to tell your lawyer to watch out for is this. She got you indicted, which removes the onus of illegal or inappropriate arrest from the equation. But considering that it is likely an agreement to bring a violation of your due process rights against you, that creates another kind of situation where she might not be able to hide behind the fact that a grand jury indicted you. In other words, if somebody's prosecuted exclusively upon a sworn out warrant, that makes that person that swore that warrant out, swore to the facts, potentially liable for civil damages. If there is an indictment, that removes that onus because an immune sovereign agency, the grand jury, has intervened. But if there is a showing of a conspiratorial agreement by the person that evokes the grand jury, then that wipes all that out, and you can still directly proceed against them.
The problem with Fani is she lied to the grand jury to even bring an indictment against me.
Well,
That's the biggest problem. She lied on multiple occasions to even seek an indictment against me. And all of this is going to come out. all of
Yeah,
it.
well,
She's going to have to pay for it all.
You have to get your lawyer to overcome the general presumption of confidentiality of anything said in front of a grand jury unless a witness in front of the grand jury testifies. And then ordinarily well, at least in the federal system, perhaps in Georgia, you're entitled to what that person said in front of the grand jury as a mechanism of impeachment. But when you've got a conspiracy, again, what happens is all bets are off. So she did something that in my 50 plus years of being involved in the law takes my personal award for the dumbest crook movement of the whole thing. I had somebody from about 30 some years ago who I always kept in mind as the dumbest crook I'd ever encountered in my legal career for what he did by incriminating himself when he had a Fifth Amendment right that would have kept him from doing it. But this fool, who is the chief law enforcement official for the district, gets up there and commits a rookie, narcissistic, con artist, fool movement to self-incriminate. I mean, Dana and I have talked about it. I came up with 4 pages of fine print of stuff the fool incriminated herself in doing. And the main point that you can go after her on is money laundering. All that cash transaction, that was to launder money. That thing with the not the grand jury, the committee that wants her to testify, the subpoena she's ignored. What the problem is there's $7.5 million of unaccounted for funding that the state provided to catch up on past due prosecutions. There's $2 million that's supposed to have been earmarked for sex crimes investigation that's disappeared, and $500,000 for a total of 10, and then $500,000 goes to juvenile matters that is unaccounted for. The cash transactions, when you start talking about RICO, look suspiciously like efforts to come up with a superficial cover for somebody laundering money. Where is the fraud coming in? They paid Wade $750,000, which is $750,000, for doing preliminary work on a non-trial set criminal matter. And the interesting thing in his perspective, the president of the United States doesn't get paid but like $450,000 a year. The Attorney General of the United States doesn't get $400,000 a year. The Chief Justice of the Arkansas Supreme Court gets about 240 some thousand with benefits. And here Wade gets $720 million that she has the final say on whether or not he gets paid. So there is ample stuff from what she testified to show that there's collusion between her and Wade, so she could okay anything that he submitted, whether it was valid, accurate, inflated, or totally bogus, and they could split the proceeds. He went and filed some stuff that would protect him income tax wise and to comply with some records, but the transactions between the two of them were in cash for amounts over $10,000 that IRS says must be recorded immediately. So she did not do that. She gave an opening statement which showed some interesting things. And one of the most interesting sets her up for making a knowingly false statement to a federal agency or official, which is to IRS. She contends that she did not have $4,500 to pay, $8,500 to pay on a debt due to IRS. They gave her an installment plan, but she got up and testified that at that very time she had $15,000 in a cookie jar in her home place.
Well, I want to insert this because everything what you just said, you're naming all of these criminal activities with Fani Willis and her office, DA office of Fulton County. So, but Trevian, what you were accused of, honestly, is it 18 of total, including Donald Trump, correct? So that would be 19?
Yes, 19, correct.
Okay. I don't even know what charges any of y'all have, except for maybe Donald Trump, because you know why? She's doing all of breaking the law. She's committing all these crimes. So what did y'all do? That never even came to light.
You don't even know. I don't even know people who are indicted. So it's just like they went in. It's like, okay, well, she's good for media. You know, her case is sexy. We can throw in the R. Kelly. We can throw in the Kanye, and we can get some clicks off of that. Like, I think that, you know, for me, Fanny knows I didn't commit a crime, and that woman who told me everything, who's thinking that that body cam was the only recording device in that room, she got another thing coming. So, you know, you just have to keep one in the chamber, you know, for times such as these, just in case somebody wants to act a fool, you have something that you can shut that down with. And people keep saying, well, why didn't you put the evidence out, you know, way before? Why do that when you don't know what they're going to play what cards they're going to play? People don't know how politics work. It's blood sport. So you always got to have something just in case. And I was always taught, never tell anybody what you're holding, whether it's a gun, whether it's evidence, it doesn't matter. But you got to keep one in the chamber, and it's going to come out. And I know Fanny knows it's going to come out. There's a lot that she's been able to figure out lately that I had tabs on, some of the things that she was doing. I could tell, you know, when I say I was watching, every time they were investigating me, I was watching them investigate me. So
here's what you tell your critics. The charge to the jury would be, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it should be clear and well understood that the defendant in this case has been charged with a crime that is a mere accusation. There is no inference of guilt to be raised by this accusation. The entire burden of proof rests upon the prosecution. The defendant has absolutely no obligation to put on any proof to defend him or herself. The defendant has an absolute right to remain silent. So, in other words, why didn't you put on proof about you had no burden? They have the burden of proving the case. Now, if you go after them civilly or as someone who may evoke the process of the state of Georgia or the federal government to be the complainant in a criminal matter, wherein somebody else is charged, now you got the opportunity to use it. More power to you.
Well, listen.
It's going to be interesting. Molto interessant.
You play poker? C'est très intéressant, madame. Eh bien.
So,
you play poker?
I do.
Okay, you know you don't have to let anybody know what's in your hand unless
I
they
learned
call
that from
you.
Michael Jordan. He taught me how to play. Yes.
So they got to call what you have, and unless they called it, you
Exactly.
well,
got it.
I really appreciate you taking the time out to come on, and I would love to have you back so you could give us an update. Because this whole Fanny saga mess is not over with. Because okay, even when they do officially completely throw out your case, you are going to file for restitution.
Definitely.
She needs to sit her ass in front of the congressional judicial committee. I need to see Jim Jordan question her. I want to see the Georgia Senate committee question her.
I'll be front and center. Trust me.
May I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Instead of restitution, go after her for tortious misconduct and intentional. Well, let's put it this way. She intended to try and destroy you with no adequate ground, so that's tortious. She did a deliberate and intentional act against your interest and harmed you, which brings up the issue of punitive damages. The interesting thing is since it would be way outside of her duty and responsibilities as a state agent, her ordinary immunity would not apply. And under the U.S. Supreme Court's latest decisions, you would be entitled to up to 10 times provable actual damages in punitive damages. So whatever your actual
Can't you also throw in intimidation? Because when you were saying that your daughter, was being
My daughter was at Fisk University, and I had to take her out of school because they kept stalking her, calling her. She could not even go to class because Fanny's office was stalking her at school.
Well, okay, then that becomes intentional infliction of emotional distress, and one of the plaintiffs becomes your daughter. If she's still a minor, you would wind up being her next best friend. If she's not, then she can be joined in the action, but that becomes subject to damages, which in her case is intentional infliction of emotional distress if she has any problems. If not, it just is tortious misconduct, the intent to intentionally harm somebody. So that leaves her open to civil damages and punitive damages. The idea is to punish.
No question. We recorded all of the calls.
And one other thing too, when she tries to defend this, since it's personal to her, she's got no entitlement to, nor business attempting to get some state paid for attorney to represent her. So have your legal staff jam her up if she tries to bring in somebody that is on her staff or is paid for by the district attorney's office to represent her. Object to it and say that's an inappropriate expenditure of state funds because it's personal to her. So she gets her tired fat ass hooked up with having to pay for the defense herself.
Right.
I mean, Fulton County has an issue.
Right.
That's who's going to be responsible for paying for all of this.
No, they will be, but you can get a judgment against them and her. And see, the beauty of it is you might collect from Fulton County, but you're also going to have her with a judgment that is a primary judgment. She'll have to file personal bankruptcy to get out from under unless there are punitive damages, which are not subject to bankruptcy liquidation. So get one against her personally that is going to punish her, because if you just get one against Fulton County, she can just sit there, they paying it for me. Ain't no problem for me. Make it hurt.
Oh,
make it more personal. Yeah. But listen,
make it hurt.
Thank you for coming on, and I definitely want you to come back to give us an update.
Yes, of course. I'm thinking if Fulton County is smart, or not even Fulton County because they have no jurisdiction over it anymore, but I do believe that either Chris Carr, the Attorney General, Brian Kemp, the Governor, somebody's going to need to step in, and I'm thinking it should be before Juan Merchan attempts to sentence President Trump on the 10th. So I'm looking at this to happen any day now.
I think Merchan is going to be in danger of being removed from office for misconduct. His wife was adamantly against Trump. His daughter managed, let's see, what was it, a $28 million fund to defeat Trump.
Right.
And for years and years, and I've been a judge longer than he has been, it was clear that if any member of your family had any conceivable interest in the outcome of the proceedings, get off the case. You shouldn't handle it. Or give the choice to the parties, both sides, prosecution and defense. Look, my wife is interested in this. My daughter is interested in this. Do you wish me to stay on the case? No, I don't. So you got to go. But they asked him and they had hearings on it. He refused. He stuck with the consequences because it raises the, quote, appearance of impropriety, unquote. Remember those terms. The appearance of impropriety. That will get you a long way, I think, with your case. And I'm not giving you legal advice because you have counsel. I'm just making an observation about the state of the law.
I appreciate it. And I'm going to roll this episode over and over and over again to make sure I don't miss a single detail.
All right. Thank you again. And I'm definitely
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Dana.
All right.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.